We're Ariel,
And Michelle,
and
and
we're
we're
the
the
Board
Board
Game
Game
Tutors.
Tutors.
And today we're going to be going over Hawk's Strike, which is a reinforcement pack, which comes from Plaid Hat Games for the game Summoner Wars. Now, you must be asking yourself, what is a reinforcement pack? You can see here, we've got some Jungle Elf cards because they're green. We got some Cloak cards, which are, I don't know what you call that, gray-ish. And then we also got some Mercenary cards, which are even more gray, I guess you would call it. Anyway, um, so as you can see, these are all the cards that come in Hawk's Strike, which is basically a reinforcement pack, which is exactly how it sounds. You would use a reinforcement pack to quote unquote deck build, which is a fancy word for saying basically messing with your deck, changing what's in it, and replacing things in it with other things. So, for example, um, the rules for deck building, basic deck building, with the Jungle Elves and with the Cloaks, they're basically the same. If you look under here, right where it says the name, Gorilla, it says it is a common of the Jungle Elves. So, if you wanted to include this Gorilla card, there you have multiple copies of it in Hawk Strike, into your current Jungle Elf deck, you would take one common out of your Jungle Elf deck and replace it with this Gorilla. Or same thing with this Elephant, which is also a common, this Jungle Guard, which is also a common, or if you had a champion uh, that you wanted to remove from your basic Jungle Elf deck and replace it with this champion, which comes in Hawk Strike, that is also a possibility. So you can do that with the Jungle Elves using the cards that are available in Hawk Strike for the Jungle Elves, or you could do the same for the Cloaks using the Cloak cards that come in Hawk Strike. And lastly, the Mercenaries. As you might guess, based on the fact that they're called Mercenaries, they have no allegiances. They can go into any deck that you want to stick them into. They could go into the Benders. They could go into the Mountain Vargoth. They could go into anything. But the same rule I just spoke about still applies. If it says common of the mercenaries, you have to take one common unit out of the army, the basic army that you're going to deck build with, which is just like I said, a fancy way of rearranging cards, putting stuff in that you didn't expect, etc. So you'd have to take one of your commons out of the Mountain Vargoth, for example, and you could replace it with this Stone Cloak. Same thing here. This one's a champion for the mercenaries, so here you would have to take out one champion from your basic deck of the army that you were deck building with and replace it with this champion, who is named Grubs. So, first, we're going to go ahead and start with the card by card analysis for the Jungle Elves. Let me go ahead and push these guys aside for the time being, and then we'll go ahead and get started with the Jungle Elves.
Okay, so the first common unit that we have here for the Jungle Elves is a Gorilla. He costs 2 magic, has an attack value of 2, is a melee fighter, and has 2 hit points. His special ability, which is really cool, is called Pummel. Once per turn, when attacking with this Gorilla, if you roll no miss die results, you may immediately attack with this Gorilla again. So I like gorillas a lot. I've had them help me a lot in games that I've played. And so here's an example. If we rolled these dice,
Doubles.
and perfect, we got 2 4s. So we didn't get any miss die results. That means the gorilla can attack again.
So
And
obviously, if someone is dead because the gorilla just killed them, then you can't kill them again. That doesn't work. But if you had one enemy unit in front of the gorilla and one enemy unit to the right of the gorilla, you could kill the first enemy unit, but with these 2 4s, and then since they were both successful, you could roll again against this guy over here. Another 2 successful. That guy would most likely be dead unless he had enough hit points to survive.
yeah, so you can attack the same target a second time or a different target. There's no limitation about that.
So if we just use the 4 successful rolls that I just made, that could be 4 hits on the unit in front of this gorilla, and so he would be down by 4 hit points. So that is the gorilla's special skill, which can be very, very, very annoying when you don't want him to be that annoying.
Yeah, when he's attacking you. Okay, this is an elephant. The elephant is a common of the Jungle Elves, has a summon cost of 3, an attack value of 2, is a melee fighter, and has 3 hit points. And the elephant's ability is Trample. This elephant may move through common units. Every unit that this elephant moves through receives 1 wound marker. This elephant must end its move on an unoccupied space. So trample exists with a couple other units within Summoner Wars as well.
If you watched our previous video about Abuashi, who is the first summoner for the Jungle Elves, he has one champion who is named
Miti
Mumwe, and he has a trample ability as well. And if you haven't seen how that works, it would essentially work something along these lines. If the elephant was here, and the gorilla was a bad gorilla, and he was fighting him, this elephant could go 1, 2, or 1, 2. You can't end on another person, and whenever you go over somebody else, you put a wound.
Mm-hmm. And so if the elephant trampled a common unit that only had 1 hit point, then that common unit would be gone once the elephant trampled on it, and you wouldn't even need the elephant to attack it directly.
Yeah, that elephant would have essentially done 1 wound to that unit, and basically that unit would now be destroyed and go into your magic pile.
Yep. And this one only works on common units, right? Yeah, so you can only do this to commons.
Yeah, and I think trample almost always refers to only attacking common units with trample. Mm-hmm. Yeah, you can't trample a champion unit. You can't trample a summoner.
Right. Okay, and then the third common unit is called Jungle Guard. He costs 4 magic, has an attack value of 1, is a ranged fighter, and has 4 hit points. So this guy's really expensive for a common. He also has a lot of life for a common, and he has a pretty special skill too. His ability is Elite Training. Instead of attacking normally, this Jungle Guard may attack a card that is up to 2 clear diagonal line spaces away. When this Jungle Guard attacks a card that it is adjacent to, add 1 to this Jungle Guard's attack value during that attack. So he has basically 3 different ways of attacking, because he could use a ranged attack, in which case he would just roll 1 die. But if he does a regular adjacent attack, then he gets to roll 2 dice. And if he does his special diagonal attack, he rolls 1 die. So here we have an example set up.
So this Jungle Guard is attacking this gorilla. Normally, as we spoke before in our basics video for Summoner Wars, diagonal attacking is not a valid way to attack anybody. Diagonal movement is also not allowed in Summoner Wars as well. But with the Jungle Guard, up to 2 clear diagonal spaces away, this Jungle Guard can attack with 1 die. So if you count with me here, 1, 2 spaces away, this gorilla is within range. He rolls a die result. It was failed. It was a failure. But he still could attack from a distance of 2 diagonal spaces away, which gives him a lot more versatility. So yeah, that's one way to attack. He could also, if he is in any space immediately adjacent to the Jungle Guard, that enemy unit I mean, then the Jungle Guard rolls 2. Not rolling great, but I got 1/6. That's good. So in this case, that gorilla would take 1 wound.
So Jungle Guards can definitely surprise your opponent because, when you're playing Summoner Wars, you're not used to thinking about someone attacking you diagonally. So if your opponent has a Jungle Guard on the board, you have to really think about, okay, am I vulnerable in this spot? Am I vulnerable in this spot? Because we're not trained to imagine attacks coming diagonally.
Right. It seems pretty counterintuitive. And also, something else that you could do as a possible attack strategy with a Jungle Guard, you might have an elephant or a gorilla, for example, in this example, in such a position that he is blocking anybody from attacking him directly in front of him, and he has the opportunity of attacking diagonally. So that way, you have the gorilla running as the defender for this Jungle Guard, and the Jungle Guard still has the opportunity to attack people diagonally. Mm-hmm. Obviously, your opponent is going to start paying attention once you have a Jungle Guard on the field to where your diagonal attacks could potentially affect them. Mm-hmm. And like we said, they're pretty expensive, but they're pretty worth it. They're basically, in many people's consideration, they're a weak champion.
Right, they're a common unit, but they're expensive and have quite a bit of life. Mm-hmm. And then this is the champion that comes with this set. Her name is Kadara, champion of the Jungle Elves. She costs 5 magic, has an attack value of 2, is a ranged fighter, and has 5 hit points. Her ability is Far Shot. When attacking with Kadara, you may attack cards that are up to 4 clear straight line spaces away. So normally ranged attacks they have to be within up to 3 spaces. But for Kadara, she can actually do up to 4 spaces away.
Right. So in this example, she could go 1, 2, 3, 4. So she could attack as far away as 4 spaces, which is pretty far across the board. Um, Obviously, with regular 3-space range, usually if you attack somebody within 3 spaces of you and you don't kill them, they're probably going to come after you with a melee attack on the next turn. So with her, she actually can shoot them far enough away that she's not so much in immediate danger.
Right.
That's that.
Okay, now we're going to talk about the cloak units that come with Hawk's Strike.
Okay, 1 second. Let me just straighten these out. All right, go ahead.
So the first common unit is a slasher. She's 0 cost, has an attack value of 1, is a melee fighter, and has 1 hit point. And her ability is Fatal Slash. When attacking an adjacent unit with this slasher, all die results of 6 or higher are counted as 3 hits. So people who like to push their luck can enjoy playing with the slasher because there's not a huge chance you'll get a 6, as we can see with these die rolls. But if you do, you do 3 hits.
Nope.
So it's very, it may or may not happen, but it's pretty cool, and it does if she's on your side.
Right. It's pretty awesome when you, like Michelle said, the slasher is definitely for people who like to push their luck, and also it's just cool to have a common unit that costs nothing that can usually pull off 1 attack, if nothing else, before they die, but has the potential to seriously damage a really strong champion. Or, for example, we talked about elephants a few minutes ago. The slasher can take down an elephant in 1 blow if it gets a 6.
Mm-hmm.
And you can see here she has that funny head covering and weird Wolverine claws, and she's wearing ballet flats for some reason. So I don't know.
She's kind of an interesting person.
Yeah, she's interesting, that's for sure.
Okay, then we have a sniper. She costs 2 magic, has an attack value of 2, is a ranged fighter, and has 1 hit point. Her ability is called Sniper Shot. When attacking with this sniper, if it moved 1 or fewer spaces on this turn, it may attack cards that are up to 5 clear straight line spaces away. So, pretty straightforward. She can attack really far as long as she's only moved 1 space or fewer. She can attack farther than Kadara could when we talked about her a few minutes ago.
Right. So she's like the anti-Kadara in terms of the fact that she rolls 2 dice. I rolled one successful, 1 unsuccessful. So snipers are really nice because they basically give you a lot of dice. They're weak, but they can stay out of the fight for the most part because they can shoot 5 spaces away. Obviously, they can only shoot 3 spaces away if you choose to move them 2 spaces on this turn.
Right.
So your opponent's obviously going to be paying attention to that because they don't want you to have the 5 range. But that's the sniper for you.
Mm-hmm. Okay, and then we have the first champion. His name is Hawk. He costs 5 magic, has an attack value of 2, is a melee fighter, and has 5 hit points. And his ability is Aerial Strike. After moving Hawk, you may choose a common unit that is within 3 spaces of Hawk and roll a die. On a result of 4 or higher, the chosen unit receives 1 wound marker. So his name's Hawk, and you can see his hawk in the picture. So it seems like thematically he's basically sending out his hawk to attack someone who's near him, a common unit who's near him, right after he moves. So this is before the attack phase. He basically gets in an extra attack by sending his hawk ahead of him.
Mm-hmm. So, for example, if Hawk moved 1 space forward, then he can choose a common unit. He chooses this elephant, for example, grabs a die, rolls it. He rolled a 1. That was pretty pointless. But basically, he gets an extra die result. If he had gotten a 4 or a 5, the chosen unit would get a wound on that particular instance. So that would be Hawk's movement phase. And obviously, after everybody moves, well, actually, after he moves specifically, that's when this would happen. And then, during his attack, if that was successful in the first time, he rolls again, both successful. That elephant would now be dead. So the hawk did the first strike, and then the elephant would be eliminated using that aerial strike. Obviously, the whole pack is named after Hawk and his special falcon. or whatever that is.
His hawk.
His hawk. So yeah, that's Hawk for you.
Okay. And then we have Sin Sin, one of the most upsetting champions you can play against.
She's really awesome to play with.
She costs 4 magic to summon. She has an attack value of 1, is a ranged fighter, and has 4 hit points. And her ability is called Charm. Instead of attacking with Sin Sin, you may choose a common unit that is within 2 clear straight line spaces of Sin Sin. You gain control of the chosen unit until the end of the turn. You may immediately move the chosen unit up to 2 spaces. So basically, Sin Sin gets control of one of her enemies' common units, right?
Yes.
Yeah, common units. And she can then move that unit and then attack with it, which is in place of her attack.
So obviously, the main thing here is don't think she's really, really powerful, because if you think that she can take over champions, you're wrong. So that just doesn't work. But, for example, instead of attacking with Sin Sin, so that phrase is key. That means you take her attack to basically take control of an enemy unit. So, for example, one time this won me the game when playing against the Jungle Elves, because I had Sin Sin within 2 spaces of a common unit, this gorilla, in the example that we're going to talk about. And the the summoner, was right over here. So, go ahead and back up a little bit. So the champion was the summoner was right here. Sorry about that. For her attack, I gave up one of my 3 attacks to take this gorilla and basically do a bender move on the gorilla, turn it around. It's now under my control. That was one of my 3 attacks. Then, for my second attack, I got this gorilla. I moved it forward because it says you can immediately move that unit up to 2 spaces.
Mm-hmm.
And then I took that gorilla and I rolled 2 dice. And basically, I forget, were they both successful in the example that we wanted to talk about?
I can't remember, but if it was successful, then remember the gorilla's ability. He actually gets to roll again if they're both successful.
So like if I got this combination right here, then I could roll again. And I got another 2. So you could all of a sudden do 4 damage to the enemy summoner using Sin Sin by basically mind controlling a common unit and sending them after the opponent's summoner.
And remember, when we talked about the Cloaks, Vlox, the summoner, the first summoner for the Cloaks, he can copy the ability of another unit, of a cloak unit on the board. So we had one game where Ariel had Sin Sin. He got Sin Sin on the board, and I went after her immediately because I knew how dangerous she was by then. So he pulled Sin Sin back into safety on his far side of the board, and then Vlox could keep copying Sin Sin as long as she was alive, and it was hard for me to get to her, to get rid of her. So he could copy her and actually use her charm ability with Vlox. So that, I'm pretty sure that was another way he won the game. That was really powerful.
And annoying.
Yeah, really annoying for me.
So
she's pretty amazing.
Yeah, she's a really awesome champion. If it comes down to a straight up fight, she's not going to win. She only has 4 hit points, and she can only attack with 1 at ranged. So, only use her to attack if you absolutely have to. And yeah, do your best to protect her. And yeah, using Vlox to copy her ability, even if she's really almost dead, is a pretty good strategy.
Mm-hmm.
So that's Sin Sin for you.
Okay, and then
last
the
one.
Admiral, another champion that's really powerful. He costs 7 magic, has an attack value of 2, is a melee fighter, and has 8 hit points, which is a lot. His special ability is called Cover. When a friendly common or champion unit that is within 3 spaces of the Admiral would receive one or more wound markers, you may instead place all of those wound markers on the Admiral. So he can take damage instead of either a common or champion unit that's in his faction, as long as it's close enough to him.
So, for example, if this gorilla was fighting the Cloaks, and Sin Sin was here, she is a champion, and it does work with the Admiral to cover for champions.
Mm-hmm.
She is within 3 spaces of him, 1, 2. So, if the gorilla attacks Sin Sin, first 2 dice. Okay, so that wouldn't continue, but this would mean 1 wound to Sin Sin. She doesn't have that many hit points, so the Admiral has the ability because it says may, which is the crucial part of it.
Yeah, it's
He can,
optional.
she could take that wound because that's what normally would happen, or he says wait, and essentially he just jumped in front of her. He has really good range for jumping in front of people, I guess.
Yeah.
And he would take the wound, not
He
3,
practices.
1. He would take 1.
Yeah.
So, but for example, let's just say the gorilla rolled successful 2, and then the admiral could say, I'm taking those 2 damage. Then, let's say the gorilla rolled again, and rolled successfully again, and rolled this. Then he would still have the opportunity to take 2 more. But that would hurt him a fair amount, because now he has 4 wounds on him out of his possible 8.
Mm-hmm.
So, but look, he's covered in wounds all over the place. So, but that he's still not dead yet. He still can do that, and yeah, he can also do that for cloak common units, which is really helpful for the cloaks because most of the cloak common units, as long as they're within 3 spaces of the admiral, will be defended by him, and he can take the wounds. But one thing you do have to remember with the admiral, he takes all of the wounds.
Yeah, even if you say you had a unit that after 1 hit would be dead, and someone
sniper,
rolled,
for example.
Yeah, and say that someone rolled 2 successful dice against the sniper, because like the gorilla rolls 2 dice.
Mm-hmm.
Both of those wounds would go to the admiral, even though only 1 wound would be necessary to kill the sniper.
And that gorilla could then, if it got too successful, could also attack again, and then whatever wounds resulted from that as well, they would go to the admiral if he
chose.
It.
Yeah.
So you basically have to play this game of, okay, so how much damage do I want the admiral to take? Basically, it's his job to take the hits for the army. Ironically, the admiral won't take any hits for any of the summoners, so obviously he doesn't really have any love for the summoners.
Yeah. And so one reason this is so powerful is that there are a lot of common units in the cloaks that would be killed with just 1 hit. So your opponent, that helps your opponent that they can kill them pretty fast. But if the admiral's around, he can keep, for a while, he can keep your common units alive. So you might think, oh, I need to only roll a die, roll 1 successful die to get rid of this common. But if the admiral's close enough, he can take the hit, and then the common's still there attacking you.
Right. And that can be really helpful with this sniper, like we said, because she has 5 ranged and 2 dice. So that is really, really helpful.
Yeah, she can shoot within 5 spaces.
Right. So that's the Admiral for you. And yeah, both really, all of them are really powerful cards that get added to the Cloaks deck using the different deck building rules. Okay. Now the last 2 cards that you will find in Hawk's Strike are the Mercenary cards that we spoke to you about previously.
Mm-hmm.
They can be added to anyone's deck.
And there are several of these common units.
There are several copies of
the same one.
Of these units. Well, the only ones that you don't have multiple copies of are champions, because they're unique. They have their own special name. There shouldn't be 2 admirals. That would be weird. Anyway, so the first one.
This is a Stone Cloak. He's a common of the Mercenaries. Costs 1 magic, has an attack value of 1, is a melee fighter, and has 3 hit points. So his special ability is called Stolen Armor, and this is kind of where he gets his 3 hit points, I guess. When summoning the Stone Cloak, choose a wall you control that has at least 3 life points remaining. Place the Stone Cloak adjacent to the chosen wall. Add 3 wound markers to that chosen wall. So you summon him next to a wall that's able to take at least 3 damage, and then you do 3 damage to that wall in the process of summoning the Stone Cloak.
So let's just pretend here. Let's just pretend this is a wall. You can summon him next to this wall, and he's cheap. He only costs 1 magic, but the consequence of that is the wall takes 3 wounds. Now, if the wall, for example, walls have 9 hit points. If the wall had 7 hit points taken out of its 9 total, then you could not successfully summon this Stone Cloak next to it. That is not an available wall. You would need to heal the wall partially or choose another wall to summon the Stone Cloak to, because once the Stone Cloak gets placed, 3 wounds come onto it, and yeah.
Yeah, so you have to be able to put 3 wounds on it.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's Stone Cloaks.
Okay.
And then here's the Mercenary Champion that comes with this deck. Oh yeah, we were using him as a wall. Okay, so his name is Grubs, Champion of the Mercenaries. He costs 7 magic, has an attack value of 3, has 6 hit points, and he's a melee fighter and has 6 hit points. His special ability is called Bodyguard. Could you read that for me?
At the beginning of your turn, if Grubs is not within 2 spaces of your summoner, Grubs receives 2 wound markers. At the end of your turn, if Grubs is within 2 spaces of your summoner, you may immediately move Grubs up to 2 spaces. So, we haven't played with Grubs as a mercenary champion very often. Typically, in our games in the past, we've mainly used the specific factions champions for that particular faction. So, but basically, what you need to know about Bodyguard is, let's just pretend this Stone Cloak is his summoner. If he is within 2, so like the way it's worded is a little funny. What you should pay attention to is the second sentence. At the end of your turn, if Grubs is within 2 spaces of your summoner, you may immediately move him up to 2 spaces. So, let's say your summoner was here and Grubs was here. He can move at the end of your turn up to 2 spaces away. So he could go there. But as a consequence for not functioning as his bodyguard, when it comes around to the next turn,
At the beginning of your next turn,
he gets 2 wounds because for some reason he stabbed himself. I'm not sure
maybe
what
he was
did.
disappointed in himself for not staying near the summoner.
Yeah, he's a mercenary. He got paid as a contract, and he's all honor bound, and I don't know. You can make up some thematic reason why he hurts himself if he's not close enough. But yeah, basically at the beginning of your next turn, then that's when the wounds are dealt.
Yeah. So you have to consider, like, do you want to keep him really close to your summoner so that doesn't happen, or do you want to push him further out, hoping to get close to the enemy's summoner so that you can roll 3 dice against the enemy summoner?
Yeah. Basically, I wouldn't really call his special skill bodyguard per se. I would more likely say if he doesn't function as a bodyguard, and you want to use him in a particular situation just to get him into a place where you think his 3 dice will come in handy on the next turn, then you would make that sacrifice. But aside from that, it's not a bad idea to have a champion close to your summoner to keep him safe from oncoming attacks. And yeah, he's not weak in any way, shape, or form. Yeah. So yeah, that was Grubs. And those were all the cards that you will find in the Hawk's Strike reinforcement pack. Hopefully this gives you some idea of whether or not you want to purchase that pack and see if you think the combinations and different powers that the different characters have would be interesting to your different styles of play. If you enjoyed this video, please go ahead and subscribe to our channel, The Board Game Tutors, at YouTube. And yeah, if you have any questions, comments, clarifications, different strategies for how to use grubs, for example, please let us know, and we will get back to you as soon as we can. Yeah, is there anything else?
No, thanks so much for watching our video, and yeah, we'll be adding more videos regularly.
All right, thanks a lot, guys.
All right, bye.